So, yesterday we talked about what took place at Texas Motor Speedway, but today we're going to discuss the aftermath of what took place last Sunday night, from officiating to tires to just what the hell is going on here, because we got a lot of stuff to talk about. But first, let's go over some things that do not concern Texas or NASCAR officiating. Let's talk about Jimmie Johnson, 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champion, competed in the IndyCar Series full-time last year, will not return to full-time racing at all in 2023. He will be announcing his 2023 schedule. He will be doing selected events in the future. He has mentioned he wants to do IMSA races, wants to do IndyCar, and would be open to doing a one-off NASCAR race. I'm saying the double looks perfect for Jimmie Johnson. Remember Project 91 with Trackhouse Racing? Jimmie Johnson could do something with that. Also, we heard reports about with Kyle Busch and Arrow McLaren that they would love to have Kyle Busch do the double with them. So who knows? 2023 Indy 500, we could see maybe Kyle Busch and Jimmie Johnson do the double for the Coke 600 and Indy 500. I would love to see that. But yeah, Jimmie's IndyCar season felt more like an appreciation tour. You know, being able to see Jimmie back full-time racing. I don't think anyone was expecting much from Jimmie in the IndyCar series. Did good on the ovals, which wasn't a surprise, but yeah, it will be interesting to see what Jimmie will do in 2023. Obviously, there's the 24 Hours of Le Mans and the Garage 56 NASCAR car that, you know, that's up for grabs. That will be interesting to see if maybe he can, you know, would be open to joining that program. But yeah, Johnson retiring for full-time racing in 2023. And another driver that's going to be making some big plans for his future is Brandon Brown. Now, we know Brandon Brown, we know the story he has, and this year, because of what took place at Talladega last fall, has been struggling with sponsorships, so much so that he had to be forced to be driving for different teams. I think he drove for Our Motorsports and drove for another team outside of his Brandon Built Motorsports company. And this weekend, he announced that next weekend's race will be his final race for Brandon Built Motorsports. Now, it is going to be very curious on both parties' directions will be for 2023. We know Brandon Built Motorsports is owned by Brandon's father, Jerry Brown, so Brandon himself is not the owner. What is he going to do past 2022 and 2023? You know, where would he go? Where would he drive for? As well as who would drive the 68 car at Brandon Built Motorsports next year? That remains to be announced yet. But I mean, it is sad. It is sad because of what happened last fall, and a group of people, a bunch of clowns, decided to keep this trend or this phrase, I'm not going to say it, but this phrase to keep it going, and it has ruined his career. Or it seems as though it's almost ruined his career. If not, it already has. But hopefully he can return to where it all began and be able to knock one out of the park, and hopefully he can bring home a win to cap off his career at Brandon Built Motorsports. But hopefully this is not the end of his NASCAR career, because Brandon Brown, he's a pretty good race car driver, and he can bring in results when he has the equipment. So hopefully this is not going to be the official end of his career. But okay, let's talk about Texas, shall we? All right, let's discuss first officiating. And Ty Gibbs. Now, I mentioned him slightly in yesterday's review, but I didn't really discuss it. But I will say this. Ty Gibbs, what the hell is wrong with you? Again, I said this yesterday. What is wrong with you? You absolute moron. You did so good for maturity. After what happened in Martinsville, you matured so much. And I'm like, oh, okay, like, he's turned a page. And then you pull this crap, and it's like, well, we just went 10 steps back. So if you haven't seen it, I'll show the footage again. On pit road, Ty Dillon comes out, hits Ty Gibbs accidentally. Wasn't planning on doing it, but Ty Gibbs just sideswipes him back, and so hard that Ty Dillon should say, had to come to a stop, and he nearly hit the NASCAR official that was right there. Why? What is wrong with you? Why would you do something like that? It's one thing to do it at a racetrack because, you know, everyone's in a car. But to do it on pit road, when you have people out there that are running around doing stuff like that, it is extremely unprofessional and inappropriate to do something like that. And Ty Gibbs, I heard some reporters saying that, you know, opinionated that he should be suspended for a race. I wouldn't be against that. I think what he did was extremely dangerous and completely unnecessary. So if he does get suspended for a race, I wouldn't be surprised by that. But I think they probably would just give him a massive fine. We should wait in the next couple of days on what the official penalty would be for Ty Gibbs. Speaking of penalties, let's discuss Byron and Denny Hamlin, shall we? Oh boy, alrighty. So we know the deal between those two. Denny Hamlin pushes Byron into the turn 2 wall. Byron, under caution, gets payback, dumps Denny Hamlin on the front straightaway. Now, the thing that was so confusing that while I believe that I didn't think what Byron did was wrong, I do think it was a bit wrong to do it under caution. It would have been better to do it under green. But the fact that he wasn't penalized shocked me because I felt like he should have been penalized. Why wasn't he penalized? NASCAR gave probably the worst reason I've ever heard.
So I'll have to be honest with you, Bob. When we were in the tower, we were paying more attention to the actual cause of the caution up there and dispatching our equipment. The Byron Denny Hamlin thing we had no eyes on. We saw Denny go through the grass, and by the time we got to a replay that showed the incident well enough to do anything to it, we'd gone back to green, but I'm not sure that that issue is completely resolved as of yet. So we'll be looking at that when we get back to work.
Are you kidding me, NASCAR? Really, NASCAR? You didn't see it, or you didn't know? First of all, that is such BS. Here's why. Number one, it happened on the front straightaway. I understand you had to focus on Martin Truex Jr. I get that. But you're telling me you have loads of people at race control. Not a single person saw why the 11 car was in the grass. No one. There was a flag stand there, an official, that was waving the flag, a flag man there. You're telling me that guy or that person didn't tell any of you at race control what happened? Seriously? Number two, you have an onboard camera on every car. NASCAR.com, on their website, they have an in-car camera of every car on the field or on the racetrack. Why? Still, you're telling me that you didn't decide, hey, let's take a look at why Denny was in the grass? You didn't check that? Also, Denny and Chris Gabor himself were yelling on the radio, trying to plead their case and explaining to NASCAR what happened. Yeah, I mean, Scott Miller says, oh yeah, if we had known, we would have given you the spot back. Well, you had Denny and Chris Gabor pleading with you on what happened, and y'all did nothing about it. What were you doing that entire time? So yeah, we had that quote-unquote explanation, which might I just say, if that's the case, then NASCAR in terms of officiating needs a complete overhaul. If you couldn't see something like that, and NASCAR this season, they have been very inconsistent in terms of, cautions, when some are cautions, some are not cautions, and now things like this. There needs to be a complete overhaul during this offseason. If you're going to officiate something as critical as this, because Denny could have won the race. And now he still finished 10th, but he could have had a shot at winning the race now because of something that you didn't keep check on. NASCAR should have been on it. And you had multiple laps to get over, to make sure you had the situation under wraps. NBC showed it 6-7 times what happened continuously. Your NASCAR social media page posted it on what happened. And y'all, no one at race control knew what happened or had an understanding on why is Denny Hamlin in the grass and how did that happen. No one saw that. BS. Denny Hamlin was, to say the least, irate when he saw that. He said, they missed it. What a effing joke. It played on the screen 5 times during caution. And other drivers, Kevin Harvick, he tweeted out saying, how in the world is that possible? How did y'all miss something like that? Same thing with Kyle Busch. He says, no penalty for this. Depends on who you are. I see. So yeah, we had that no call explanation, which again, that was one of the worst explanations I've ever heard. If that's the case, then Helen Keller must be officiating NASCAR race control, because I don't understand how you have all this evidence from numerous sources and nothing was done. Kevin Harvick did tweet something else about how officiating and giving out penalties. And he said, saying, quote, all these situations should be handled during the race. Just like F1's quote unquote under investigation works at any point of the race, you issue a penalty and move on. That way, when you don't see it, you can still handle it during the event. And Denny Hamlin responds by saying, it's that way with restarts. Not sure why other incidents can't be also. And that is a very, very, very valid point. With restarts, when NASCAR does its restarts, they still look at it 1 or 2 laps after it happened before they make a decision. Why didn't they make a decision on this situation when you had multiple laps under caution to understand, hey, why did Denny Hamlin go from second to third place to 14th to 15th place like that when we're under caution? Again, something like there needs to be a complete overhaul in NASCAR to make sure that not only penalties are given out so you can set an example and they're consistent, but also cautions are consistent. Like what we saw last weekend at Bristol, cautions were extremely inconsistent. Some drivers that had flat tires got waved the yellow flag, and some with the same problem didn't. So again, this offseason, officiating needs to be revamped heavily. Now, as for the tires, I understand that Texas Motor Speedway is a monstrosity of a racetrack. How it's designed, Goodyear was in a bad situation to begin with going to Texas. I'm not denying that. All right, I'm not going to deny that. However, Goodyear's explanation after the race was trying to pin more of the blame on the teams and on the track and on the compound and on the next gen car, and not trying to put the blame, or at least the majority of the blame, on themselves. You create the tire. You're the only tire for NASCAR. It is your responsibility to make sure that you put on the best tire that is not only going to put on the best racing, but it's also durable. Now, there are two types of ways of going about it. Denny Hamlin went the more eyebrow-raising way. Rodney Childress went the more, I don't want to say intellectual way, because I don't want to make it sound like I'm calling Denny dumb, because what he said wasn't dumb, but Rodney went the more technical route of really explaining. Denny went more of the headlining grab. Denny said this: if you're thinking that maybe NASCAR will look into someone else for tires, keep dreaming. Goodyear pays him a fat check, so they're allowed to gouge the teams each week. Oh, Denny, you're doing too much, man. I love Denny Hamlin. Denny may not be a fan favorite, but I love Denny Hamlin just for things like this. Absolute gold. But yeah, I don't know if NASCAR Goodyear is going to be happy with that tweet. Rodney Childress went, like I said, the more technical route, explaining about things or adjustments that can be made to prevent things like that from happening. Like, for example, he mentions with the shock limiter rule and how that is a big issue with the causing of tire issues. Also explains downforce and with the rear diffuser, how all these things, when you adjust it, can help with tires and make them last longer. But again, also a big part of the reason has to do with just Texas itself and how it was built and how it was reconfigured. Basically, it automatically put Goodyear in it wasn't such a good situation for Goodyear to begin with, but they certainly didn't help themselves with the tire compound they brought last Sunday. So yeah, again, that's another thing that's going to need to be taken care of, especially during the off season. You look at the rest of the season. I'm worried about Las Vegas, Homestead, and Martinsville, those types of racetracks where, when you go, Martinsville, because the tires don't wear, and that's the issue we saw a lot with Goodyear in recent weeks, is that with Goodyear tires, they don't wear, yet they explode, which that is such a bad combination. Not only do you have a tire that doesn't wear, you have a tire that explodes after a short period of time. Again, 2022 with Goodyear reminds me of 2008 with Goodyear, where when we went to the COT car full time, throughout the season, there were a lot of issues with Goodyear and tires falling apart or just tires not being durable or being trustful with the teams. We're seeing that same thing in 2022. 2 weeks in a row, tires have been the main problem. But yeah, so we discussed the officiating, we discussed the tires. Now let's talk about the track itself. What is the future of Texas Motor Speedway? We do know in 2023 it's going to have one race day for the first time since 2004. There have been rumors about it being reconfigured, although we don't know what the reconfiguration is. We do know that a lot of the drivers do not want it to be like Atlanta, which I think is a good thing. I don't think we need another Atlanta. We don't need to be reconfiguring every single mile and a half racetrack to a super speedway, because one of the beauties about super speedway racing is the fact that it's rare. When you have it every single week, it's no longer exciting. We have, 6 super speedway races this year. We don't need 7. In fact, we don't even need 6. I think 5 is already pushing it, but I would be okay with anything but another Atlanta. Obviously, tear down the racetrack. Make it into a short track. Hell, you can even make it into a dirt track. I don't care. Or even bring back the original 1.5 mile track. But turns 1 and 2, they absolutely ruined it. And they just ruined it even further by adding all this PJ1 and resin to try and create a second groove. It it's just made it impossible to produce a good race. Even though what we saw on Sunday was somewhat good for Texas standards, you put that at any other mile and a half racetrack, it would be garbage. So Texas needs a fix. Officiating needs a fix. The tires need a fix. Just so many issues that happen at Texas on Sunday that need to be addressed as soon as possible for the end of the season so that next year we don't have a failure like what we saw on Sunday. But yeah, those are my thoughts. What do you think of this episode? What are your thoughts on Ty Gibbs? What do you think? How long do you think he should be penalized? If so, how much? What do you think the penalty will be for William Byron? What do you think the future will look like for Texas Motor Speedway and with Goodyear as tires? You know, how do you trust Goodyear? Because when you look at the next races, Talladega won't be an issue, but when we look at, you know, like I said, tracks like Las Vegas, tracks like Homestead, Martinsville, with how little they wear, how do you think it's going to affect the remaining races of the NASCAR playoffs? Love to hear your thoughts on that. Until next time, my name is Jett from MDK. Thank you all so much for watching. See y'all next time.